TARDIS. It can travel anywhere, whether that be an alien planet in the far-flung future, or back in time to Earth's long and rich history, the latter forming what we know as the historical stories. Obviously. I'm Clacker the Geek, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 Doctor Who historical stories from the revived era. Now before we get started, I need to make a few ground rules, because not all historicals are made equally. So let's take a look at Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror. That could qualify for the list because its themes and characters have to be... it has to be set where it's set, because the themes and characters link to that time period. Whereas an episode like The Next Doctor, you know, set in Victorian London, could be set anywhere and you would have pretty much the same story. So I've looked at all the episodes of New Who set in the past and looked at them on a case-by-case basis to see, can that qualify? Because I'm judging these as historical stories and not just generally episodes. So this also disqualifies episodes like The Empty Child or Human Nature. As much as I love those two stories, you could swap the time periods and you would get a similar story, so I'm not going to include them. Also no personal history, so stories like Father's Day, I love that, but that's disqualified as well, because again, that's sort of personal history. It's the historical events are fictitious, it's not real characters and not real events, so I'm not going to include that. And the third thing is, it's just my opinion, so don't have a hissy fit if your favourite one is not on there. Probably, it turns out I probably like it, it's just I don't consider it a proper historical. Anyway, that's enough rambling. You want to hear my thoughts on these episodes. It's getting sunny outside now, which is always good. Let's get to the ranking. Number 10, The Unicorn and the Wasp. Now, before we need to talk about this story, just addressing something quickly. The writer. Now, putting aside Gareth Roberts', you know, his quite frankly transphobic comments that he's made, which I don't support or agree with at all. Just putting that aside for a minute, this is quite a fun story. It's a cool sort of Agatha Christie homage, like a sort of murder mystery story with Agatha Christie, and she's very good. The 10th Doctor and Donna are amazing as well. You've got a cool guest cast, and it's just a nice feel-good episode, a nice one to watch sort of around the summertime. It's dumb, it's goofy in parts, you know, the bees are aliens, it's a bit dumb, but it's a feel-good, entertaining story, you know, a nice one to watch around summertime. Number 9, A Town Called Mercy. This is a great little historical in Series 7, and in terms of like the first half of Series 7, this is probably the best of the bunch. Taking place in Nevada, in like the Wild West, it's a great Western story. I love a spaghetti Western story, and this is great. Because considering Series 7 is a very cinematic looking season, the Wild West is depicted incredibly well, whether it's the shots of the sweeping shots of the desert, or the little town, it's depicted incredibly well. The 11th Doctor's great in this story, and his more dark side and his morality come into play with this story, and he's really good in this one. Amy and Rory are really good in this story, and there's some good supporting characters like Carla Jex, who's the alien who comes to take refuge in the little town, and you know, the idea of him wanting to start anew and, you know, make amends for his mistakes after the horrible things he's done in the past. It links to the American Western theme because it links to stuff like the American Dream and stuff. You can tell I've been studying too much GCSE English. And also, the Gunslinger is one of the coolest looking monsters of the revived series. I mean, he's a robot cowboy, what more do you want? Number 8, Rosa. This, I'd say, is one of the best stories of Series 11. I think the 1950s America setting is realised incredibly well. The actor who plays Rosa Parks gives a very good performance, and this story really does portray like the danger, how dangerous it is, because obviously half of the TARDIS team are, you know, people of colour. So, you know, it'd be quite dangerous for them, and it feels kind of realistic, and yeah. It is very brave for Doctor Who to tackle this kind of topic, and although I do think it has explored racism in the past better, like I thought Remembrance of the Daleks, I think that does explore racism very well. This one, you know, it's not bad by any stretch. I think it does it very sensitively and very respectfully. And I think the ending scene of that famous, that famous historic moment where Rosa Parks, the Rosa Parks bus thing, I think it was done incredibly well, and it's done incredibly well, and it's quite sad. Even though I think the pop song, you didn't need that, it does kind of take you out the moment, for me at least. The big problem with the story is the villain, Krasko. He's just pointless. He's a pants villain. You don't need him. And this could have been a pure historical about the dangers of racism, and the Doctor and the TARDIS team need to just, you know, help make sure history is in check. You don't need to shoehorn a villain in there. It just doesn't. It's not necessarily. But other than that, very good story, I think. Number 7, Thin Ice. The episode where Peter Capaldi punched a racist. But this Series 10 story, taking place in the Industrial Revolution at the London Frost Fairs in the 19th century, is a really key chapter in Series 10. Capaldi is great as usual, and him in that top hat, the top hat look just suits him really well. And Bill is great. This is a real standout for Bill, and Pearl Mackie gives a great performance. That scene where she confronts the Doctor about have you ever killed anyone always sticks with me. And this is the episode where she realises that time travelling isn't all fun and games. There's going to be death, there's going to be consequences, and they have to help. And that always stuck with me. When it comes to portraying the Industrial Revolution, it's quite grim in places, whether it's, the creature trapped under the Thames or the starving kids on the street. It's pretty grim. And, I think the Frost Fair, the frozen Thames, is really well realised. And also love how, obviously Bill, being how she is, questioning how time travel works. And I really like that aspect of it. The only criticism I have is that the villain is a bit weak. But other than that, it's a nice, enjoyable watch. Number 6, The Unquiet Dead. The first historical we got in the Revive series, and what a way to give him. Mark Gatiss gives us a great script with Charles Dickens, the Ninth Doctor, and the Gelf, these weird ghost creatures. It's a really good story and a really underrated one. Eccleston is fantastic. He's got the comedic stuff and the sombre stuff down to a T. Billy Piper as Rosa is very good. Simon Callow gives a really good performance as Charles Dickens, and he's one of my favourite historical figures that they've done in Doctor Who in the new series, because just the way that they present him, he's coming to near the end of his life at this point, and the realisation that there's more out there, and that delight. It's just a really nice portrayal. The Gelf are a really cool monster, and the effects have held up quite well, I think. Eve Miles as Gwyneth is a really good supporting character, and as I've been watching a lot of Torchwood recently, and there's stuff like the Rift, which is set up here, it's really cool looking back on the story. A lot of people say that this is quite bland, but I'd have to disagree, honestly. It's got a bit of everything. It's got some humour, it's got some horror, it's got a great historical figure, some good supporting characters, good production values. It's just the whole package. Number 5, The Fires of Pompeii. Rewatching this story for this video, it was an amazing watch. Taking place during 79 AD with the destruction of Rome because of the volcano. This story's just got the heart. It's got everything. Ten and Donna are amazing as usual. The Pyrovils are really well realised, and the action set pieces are great, whether it is the Pyrovils, the explosions, or whether it is the volcano eruption. It's really well done. You've also got Peter Capaldi and Karen Gillan before they would actually appear in the show properly. And I love how this massive event is portrayed through the lens of this ordinary family, and the father is played by Peter Capaldi, and it really endears you to them, and it's heartbreaking watching them nearly die. And the cherry on top is that last scene when the Doctor goes back to save the Carcillius family after Donna encourages him just to save somebody, and it's amazing. It's a great moral dilemma. Pompeii of the world, it's brilliant. Number 4, Demons of the Punjab. This story from Series 11 is absolutely terrific. It looks gorgeous, I think. Portraying this historical event, again through the lens of more personal character drama with Yaz's family, I think was a very welcome move. And I love how they explore this really dark time in history where millions lost their lives to, but a period of history which I'd never heard of until this episode. It never gets taught in school, and I just never heard of it. So, in a way, it did educate me on this part of history, which is what the original goal of Doctor Who was back in the 60s. And I think the Thajarians are quite cool. Their design is amazing, and I think thematically they work in the story. A lot of people said, oh, you didn't really need them, you could have had it as a pure historical. And well, yes, you could. I think it works because they're meant to, these are the last of their kind, and they're not really the proper villains, so I can get away with it. And, because they've dedicated their lives to, honouring those who die alone, which was a big thing, with this part of history. Loads of people died alone. So I think it works here. But yeah, I think it's beautiful, bittersweet, but very tragic and bleak at the same time. And it's a brilliant story, I think. Number 3, The Girl in the Fireplace. Now, when I first watched this story, I never used to think too much of it, but rewatching it last year when they did the global watch-along, it's now my favourite of Series 2, and a terrific script from Stephen Moffat himself. Now, while stories like The Fires of Pompeii and Demons of the Punjab might be better historicals, because this story has the whole, sci-fi spaceship stuff, I prefer this as a story, so I'm going to put it higher on the list. I think the idea of the Doctor meeting Madame de Pompadour or, you know, throughout her life in sparing moments. It's such a genius concept, you know, a love story through time and space. And this is one of the few times where I'm okay with the romance stuff. And it wouldn't feel out of place in Series 5. It's got that very fairy tale angle too. And David Tennant and Sophia Myles have really good chemistry with each other. The Clockwork Droids are pretty creepy, and it's just it's a great concept, really well executed, and quite emotional at points. Number 2, The Haunting of Vella. Easily my favourite Jodie Whittaker story. This is terrific. Set in 1816 on the fateful night that inspired the first sci-fi story, Frankenstein, you've got characters like Mary Shelley and Percy Shelley, Lord Byron and a few others. And this story is great. The way that they're portrayed as just normal people and very human. The actors are doing a great job. And the way that, you know, their history is explained, usually that Jodie will just basically read the introductory paragraph off their Wikipedia page. But here there's that great scene where they're all dancing, and the exposition and facts about these historical figures to educate the viewer, it's done through like gossip and dialogue, and it's exposition in a very organic way. This is Jodie at her best. She properly feels like the Doctor in this one. You know, she's just great. She's serious. The jokes are actually quite good in this one, and it's just, and the horror aspect of it, like the haunted house stuff near the beginning, is really well done. But the lone Cyberman is really what makes this story. From the design, you know, with the rusty look, the broken parts, the bandaged arm, the tubes, and, you know, the broken helmet, and the way that his face just looks rotted away. It looks horrible. From the voice, which does come from the actor and not Nick Briggs in ADR, makes him feel very much human and reminds you that there is a person underneath these Cybermen. And just how twisted and evil he is, you know, he reveals that, you know, he hasn't got his emotion inhibitor on. He's just a complete psychopath. It's revealed he killed his own children. He doesn't get swayed by the whole power of love thing at the end, which is a great subversion of expectation. And he snaps somebody's neck at one point off screen, but you hear it, and it's like, that's pretty grim for Sunday evening TV during the half term. I mean, this was broadcast during the half term in February last year, so yeah. And the whole parallel with the Cyberman and Frankenstein, it just works perfectly, and I love it to bits. Number 1, Vincent and the Doctor. Now, I'm going to say it now, this is my favourite Doctor Who story ever. And, I mean, what else is it going to be? It's easily the best historical story we've had in the Revival series, and ever really, to be honest. Whether it's the top tier script from Blackadder and Love Actually writer Richard Curtis, to whether it's Tony Curran's incredible portrayal of Vincent van Gogh, to whether it's Matt Smith and Karen Gillan, to whether it's Bill Nighy's really fun cameo, to whether it's the way they explore mental health and depression with the invisible monster, the Crephaeus. You know, the monster serves a purpose here, you know. The monster of him being invisible, it's a metaphor for depression and how only Vincent can see it, and it's not a tangible thing. It just works perfectly, and the ending scene breaks me every time. No matter how many times I watch it, I will always be crying like a little girl. It's beautiful, and it's just, I love it every time. And then the heartbreaking realisation of Vincent still killed himself. It's heartbreaking, but hopeful at the same time, you know. Life is a pile of good things and bad things. Bad things don't always soften the good. Oh, whatever the quote is. It's a beautiful quote. And it's just no issue with this episode whatsoever. It's perfect. So that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. What are some of your favourite historicals? You know, it can be classic series and new series, whatever. Leave them in the comments below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel, click the little bell so you don't miss a thing. And this is Clack of the Geek signing out. Goodbye, everyone.